Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the On Purpose Investor Podcast, show number 64, How to Invest in Real Estate Without Going Bankrupt. Welcome to the On Purpose Investor Podcast. My name is Eric Vogel. I'm a real estate investor, mastermind coach, husband to an amazing woman, and often my co-host, Tiffany, and father to two incredible boys. I'm on a mission to help you become a real estate investor and not only achieve seven-figure success like my wife and I did, but to do so with intention, direction, and clarity. If you want to transform your financial and personal goals, become the version of yourself you've always wanted, and reach your dream life ASAP, then you're in the right place. Thank you for deciding to hit that play button today. Now let's begin. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the On Purpose Investor Podcast. I'm your host, Eric, with my amazing, lovely, beautiful wife, just slap gorgeous, co-host,
Tiffany.
You might notice today we're both might cough a little bit. Tiffany's voice is on the brink of going away.
Yeah.
We've been battling a cough here in the Vogel house. There is no rest for the podcast. We're coming down here. We got to deliver some material today. But
yeah,
we're excited for today's episode.
Let's get into it.
All right. So, investing in real estate can be scary because you have concerns that you will lose everything you worked for and put your family at risk. But you have two options. You can continue sitting on the couch every night after work or, the kids go to bed and dream about the time and financial freedom through real estate. Or you could take three key steps to set your business up to be less risky and a way to create generational wealth.
Yeah, sure. Having hundreds of thousands of dollars or even millions of dollars in debt is risky, but having the right infrastructure will protect you from the unexpected and allow you to live financial freedom without the burden of what might go wrong. So what do you want to do? If you're ready to learn how to build your business the right way, then hang out with us as we discuss three key things you need.
Right. So those three key things, let's just go ahead and list those three things. Then we're going to dive into each one briefly.
Sounds good.
Number one, reserves, access to cash.
Yep.
Right. Number two,
knowing your financials.
Yeah. And you're the financial whiz. Yes. So I lean heavily on you to make sure our home is in order in that way. Home and our business. Right. Yep. And number three is insurance and entities. So we're talking about cash or access to cash. Mm-hmm. And we're talking about making sure all of that's in order and then protecting it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's dive into number one, reserves. This is something that you should have going into it.
Yeah.
And it's either cash or access to cash.
Right. We got that from Gary Johnston.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great point. You don't have to have the cash sitting in a savings account earning. Well, interest rates are a little better now, but you don't have to have it sitting in a savings account. You just need access to it. So what does that mean? You could go get a HELOC on your house.
Now, a HELOC, if you don't know, is a home equity line of credit. That means you have enough equity in your home that you could go to a bank and say, I want to utilize some of this equity in my home. Mm-hmm. And they will give you a second position mortgage on your home to access some of that equity. Now, let's say you have a $300,000 home and it's worth $500,000. You're not going to be able to go pull $200,000 out of your home. The bank is going to create a leverage position to where you're not over maximized.
Right. But a lot of them will go up to 90%. So you can get significant money out.
Yeah. Just understand HELOCs can be risky. HELOCs can be a little unpredictable. Make sure you read the fine print.
Yeah, and a lot of times they have floating interest rates. Mm-hmm. So you just want to make sure you know what you're doing. But it is a way to get access to cash.
Yeah, we did an episode a while back, probably in the episodes 10 through 20, somewhere in there, where we talked about HELOCs and how the irresponsible utilize HELOCs to go fund toys or vacations.
Paying off the credit card.
Yeah.
So if you use it to buy an asset, though, it sets you up to buy an asset or as those reserves.
Yeah.
It just gives you a good, comfortable place to be, I think.
And if you're in a position where you just bought a house and you're like, well, I just bought a house. I have a great interest rate. Maybe you bought it,
a couple years ago,
8 months ago, or, a year and a half ago, and you have great interest rates, but you bought it at the top end and you don't have a ton of equity. That's okay. Give that house that you're living in 10, 15 years, and you're going to be paying down that debt, and your home is going to increase in value slightly over the time. And you're eventually going to have access to cash. So don't feel like, you don't have the ability to get started or anything like that.
I remember we bought my first house and you had a house, but there was no equity in your house either.
No.
And we were trying to do a deal and someone was like, just take out a HELOC. Like a lender was telling us,
Yeah.
or that we could use the equity in our houses, like collateral and all this stuff. And I was just like, there's no equity.
Like we both bought on the top end. And
what
I bought
was
mine
the top end in 2016
for me and 2018 for
Yeah.
you. And we're like, we don't have equity.
Right.
Like I just had to rent my house out because I couldn't sell it.
Yeah. But what we did wind up doing, which I don't necessarily recommend, but here's what we did. We took a loan on our retirement accounts.
Yeah.
Because we knew we could use that money to help fund the rehabs.
Yeah.
And then we would pay it off as soon as we refinanced out of that.
But you got to make sure it's in a position where it's like an arbitrage, where the payment going back to that account, whether it's the HELOC or your retirement account, that payment going back out, that your cash flow is greater than that payment going back.
Absolutely.
So that you're using your own money.
Right.
You're using either your equity or your retirement that has been growing for you. And you're using that to create that cash flowing asset, and make sure your cash flow is greater than the payment needed
absolutely.
to go back.
And I mean, with using these types of accounts for reserves, your hope is that you don't need to touch it.
Right.
But if you do, you want to make sure that you have the ability to make sure you pay it back.
Right.
Just saying, these are ways that you could have access to cash available without having $100,000 sitting in the bank.
Yeah. I like to call it the rainy day fund.
Yeah.
I know Dave Ramsey calls it the rainy day fund too, or the security. What does he call it? The safety net?
I don't know.
Yeah. But it's just that
emergency fund.
Emergency fund is that pile of cash or access to a pile of cash that you can utilize in the case of a major thing that's happening.
And I would recommend 2 to 3 months of your operating costs in that account ready to go.
Yeah.
And if you have, I mean, it really depends on your portfolio too. We fixed up all of our houses when we bought them.
Mm-hmm.
And we know there's some that still have some deferred maintenance. So we know we have a pretty good idea of what house needs a roof.
Mm-hmm.
So we can set that money aside to make sure we have it available.
Right.
But if you're getting started and you are buying new houses, you don't need as much reserves as if you're buying 70s houses that you're minimally fixing up.
Right.
So just know your business. And if you're going with older homes that you're not completely gutting, then it might look more like 6 months available, because you're going to have big repairs.
Yeah. Just be honest with yourself on the situation of the homes that are in your portfolio. And if you don't know anything about homes, and that's okay, get a home inspector,
Yeah,
get a home inspector or a general contractor to come walk through your house and say, this is going to need to be fixed in this amount of time, and create kind of like a capital expenditure plan.
Right.
Like a calendar of, I know in 6 months I'm going to have to possibly do this.
Right.
In 5 years, I'm going to have to do this, and just back into it.
Absolutely.
That's just a great way to back into your reserves.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Number 2 is understanding your financials. I'm really bad at finances.
Yeah, you are.
That's why my beautiful wife is in charge. So let's talk about financials.
Yeah. Well, I think first it's getting your personal finances in a good spot. If there are things you can cut, like eating out, for example. I know we spend a ton of money eating out. And when we feel like we need to cut back, that's the first thing that goes. Yeah. But are there other things like subscriptions you're not using, or, just knowing where your personal finances are, getting them in order, and making sure that you're not getting that like inflation creep, where you earn more money at your job. So then lifestyle creep, that's the word.
Yeah.
Where you just start spending more and more.
Right. And if you're in the position right now where you are building, you're a builder and you are trying to build your portfolio.
Yeah. And builder, not as in you're building houses,
No.
but you're building your business and your portfolio.
If you're in that position, I would highly encourage you to adapt the mentality of get comfortable being uncomfortable, in the sense of give away some luxuries. Don't go on those vacations, cancel those subscriptions that are sucking time.
Just for a couple of years.
Just for a couple of years, so that you can give everything you got to building this lifestyle that is going to provide generational wealth.
Right.
Understanding your financials, if you can dive in and make sure your personal finances and home is in order, that way you have the wherewithal to go purchase properties.
It makes it easier to get a loan because your finances are, your credit looks good. And so what we recommend is, if you're interested in real estate, make sure that your personal finances are situated so that you don't wind up in a situation where you have to file bankruptcy because your personal obligations are too much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because is a way that your LLC could be at risk
Mhm.
in a situation where you file for personal bankruptcy.
Right.
So get your personal stuff in order, and then really know your financials in your business.
Yeah.
Having a bookkeeper that can help manage and track your expenses, and then going in and looking and seeing which properties are profitable, what's not.
Because
And
it may look like you have cash flow, but then if you run those ledgers together of, well, here's how much cash flow I had, but I also had to replace the water heater.
right.
I also had to get all of the windows sealed.
Yep.
Also had to do a little repair here and there. I cash flowed $500 on this house, but I spent $700 on this
Right.
house this month.
Right.
And then the next month, it's, well, I made $500, but I ended up spending $550.
Yeah.
You know, it looks like a great property because you're cash flowing $500 a month. But if those repairs and upkeep, and then let's say you have a turnover that costs $5,000,
Right.
and then you spread that out over the year, and you're like, wow, I actually lost money this whole year.
Absolutely. And I think, I mean, using your tax return can help, but let's be real. You don't file your taxes generally until closer to April.
Mhm.
A lot of real estate investors ask for extensions.
Mhm.
So you're looking a year and a half past on some of the stuff.
Right.
So you want to make sure that you're checking it at least once a quarter, ideally once a month, to see which properties are doing really well.
Mhm.
And we, recently did a calculation to look at our return on equity.
Yeah.
So we took the average over our portfolio over the last 3 years, and we looked at what the cash flow was versus the equity in that house. And, when we first bought them, cash on cash return was gold. That's all we cared about.
Right.
But now our houses have appreciated and we've owned them long enough. So it's interesting to see what are we earning on that cash that we have in the property.
Yeah.
And if we sold that house, even after taking the hit on agent commissions, hopefully 1031, exchanging it so we don't have a tax hit, what could we do with that money?
Could we have a better return on equity?
Right. Because
Yeah.
let's say we have a 6% return on the equity, but we could take that equity, sell those houses, and put it into something that has a 15% cash on cash. We're earning more on that equity, that cash that's been sitting there, than we would have if we just left it.
Right.
So you can't do that unless you know your numbers.
And that comes from a frame of mind of debt is good. Of the working debt is good debt. Debt on cash flowing assets is good debt.
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
Because a lot of people may not be concerned about return on equity because they just
absolutely.
want paid off houses.
Yeah, and that's the stage I think a lot of people get to. Like, we're still trying to optimize some things. So we've done this analysis, and it's just helpful to have a clear idea of what is happening in the business.
Yeah.
And I know when we first were buying properties, we analyzed them as, here's the rent, here's the expenses, here's the mortgage, here's taxes and insurance, reserves. The rest is for us.
Mm-hmm.
But what you don't account for is if you have a bookkeeper or property management software, or you go join a mastermind or go on a trip, all of that comes out of your business expense.
Right.
And if you're not putting money aside for that, you can find out real quick that you're not making as much as you thought you were.
Right.
Because there's these overhead business expenses that come out. So when you're analyzing deals, it's one thing to look at just like, what is that deal going to add for that one house? But there's other expenses as you scale that come into play too.
Right. So, maybe figure out how much you want to spend on education and software and
your operating
expense for your business and yourself within that business, and add that line item into your numbers.
Absolutely. So I've been working with Simple CFO. David Richter wrote the book on
Profit First for real estate investors. Thank you. I was totally blanking. So we help other investors figure out their numbers and what that operating number should be. So then we're setting aside the reserves, and we're really doing like deep analyses to say, hey, you're spending X amount of dollars on SMS text messages, but you're not getting a return on it. Yeah.
So I've really enjoyed digging deep on that kind of stuff. And if there's something I can help with in your business as you're analyzing numbers, whether it's a deal or working, in the ongoing operations, I'd love to help. So reach out to Tiffany at onpurposeinvestor.com, and I'd love to set up a call and see how I can help.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
She's not blowing smoke. She's really dang smart, and she's not going to toot her own horn, but she's a Georgetown educated lady.
Okay.
And she's smart, and she really wants to help.
Yeah.
And I know that you've really uncovered some things about yourself, and helping people has really been uncovered in the sense of like, you want to help people transform.
Yeah.
And you want to coach people. And
Absolutely.
so, yeah, definitely reach out to Tiffany for anything financial.
Yeah, don't reach out to Eric. No
I
offense.
mean, if you reach out to me, I'll probably give you an attaboy or attagirl and, you know, high five you and then send you to Tiffany so she can tell you, nope, you're messing up.
Yeah.
All right. So the last thing, number 3, is insurance and entities.
Yeah. So making sure you have the right entity structure for what you're doing in your business.
Mm-hmm.
Most people have rentals. They put it in an LLC. Check and make sure that is what you need to do.
Yeah.
Your situation might be different. It might make sense to look into something like trusts or an S corp makes sense for some businesses versus an LLC. There's a lot of complexity to it, and I don't want to give blanket advice. So check with an attorney, explain what your business is currently, what your goals are, and they can help you get set up appropriately.
Right. The last thing you want to do is to own 50 houses and they're all in your personal name. We know people that have had 500 houses in their personal name. But what I'm saying is the last thing you want to do is get to a large portfolio and then, realize, oh, I needed to be safer or I want extra security and then have to go back and restructure.
Right.
The idea is you want to build it in the vision of the structure you want.
Right.
And that takes reaching out to real estate attorneys, reaching out to CPAs, and just getting their input on what have you seen other investors do? What kind of safety and security does it bring to their business?
Yep.
And how does that align with what I need?
Well, there's that, and making sure that you do it right. If you have an LLC, there are certain things you have to do for that LLC to hold in court.
Right.
And
especially like, breaking the corporate veil.
Right. So Veil Not Fail. I don't remember the guy's name that wrote it. It's a Rich Dad Advisor. Fantastic book. Highly recommend it to learn what you need to be doing.
So people may not understand what piercing the corporate veil means.
So it's setting up your LLC appropriately so that if you're sued, the LLC holds as a separate entity.
Yeah.
If they pierce the veil, which is really easy to do if you're not doing things the right way, then all of a sudden you don't even have an LLC, basically, from an asset protection side.
Yeah.
So his book teaches you what you need to know, but he also offers a service. So if you'd rather outsource it, they will help you make sure you're doing everything right.
So what's a quick example of piercing the corporate veil? Is it if I go and buy something on my personal card for the business?
Yeah. Not keeping separate financials is part of it. Not having meeting notes. The books explains it all.
Yeah.
But if you don't treat it like a business and have a very defined separation between your personal and that business, they can basically say that you weren't acting like a business and therefore that it's disregarded, basically.
Yeah.
So if you're using an LLC or any kind of entity as a protection, just make sure you're doing it right.
Yeah. So that book's called Veil Not Fail.
Yes.
Or Veil.
Garrett Sutton, I think.
Okay.
Veil Not Fail.
We will get that into the show notes.
Yeah.
Be sure to check that.
Absolutely.
All right. And the second part, we talked about entities. Let's talk a little bit about insurance. We have an amazing insurance agent that takes really good care of us. And
if you're in Georgia and you want her contact info, shoot me an email. I'll get it to you.
Absolutely. So insurance, you want to make sure not only the houses are protected from, damages from storms or
like property damage,
neglect from the tenants or, what have you. But you also want to make sure you are protected from negligence of the people renting your homes.
Yeah, liability in general.
Like you're protected in general. Like maybe your tenant invites someone over and they get hurt,
or you're driving a car and hit a pregnant woman on the interstate. You want to make sure that if she tries to sue you, that you're covered.
So I accidentally, it was raining. I had a trailer on the back of my truck and I just didn't start slowing down enough, and I just slid right into the back of a car, and lo and behold, a pregnant lady gets out, and I'm just in my mind thinking of all the ways it was all over.
Yeah. We had an insurance claim. It wasn't a big deal, and
she was okay.
Yeah.
She did.
Baby was fine.
She went to the hospital and got
but
checked out.
It was a terrifying moment of crap. Are we properly insured?
Right.
Because she technically could sue us and then somehow get to the, piercing the veil and get to the rentals.
Yeah.
So it's just making sure that you have the right insurance set up so you feel comfortable.
Highly recommend, if you don't have an umbrella policy, to talk to an agent to see what type of protection that could give you,
if
it's worth it, if it's worth it and fits for you.
Yeah, they're pretty cheap. So I highly recommend at least ask the question. When you're first getting started, you don't know what questions to ask.
Right.
So we're hoping episodes like this give you some thoughts on things you should be asking and setting up for yourself.
I mean, what we used to do is go to every single real estate meeting with a pen and a paper with questions that we needed answered.
Yeah.
And then oftentimes we'd go to those meetings, get those answered, and then leave with about 10 more questions.
But at least you know what to Google.
Yeah, that's right.
Or who to call.
And no matter where you are, pick up the phone, find a real estate attorney, maybe one that you've used to close with.
Yeah.
And just say, I'd like to set up an office hour and pay you
pay them their hourly rate.
Pay them their hourly rate and let them help you build your structure.
Absolutely.
Call an insurance agent in your area. If you're in Georgia, please call us for our agent's information.
Well, I want to add too, like with your personal side, with the insurance and entities, making sure you have a will or a trust set up.
Yeah.
Because if something happens to you, you want to make sure that the portfolio you're building is going to the people you want it to go to, or the organization. So having all that structure. So meeting with an attorney could be a great time to talk about your will and your LLCs and
your entity structure in general.
So one of the teachers we follow is John Schaub. And when we talked about understanding your financials, one of the things he really recommends is analyzing your properties every year and selling your worst ones every year.
He calls them the dogs.
Yes. And you upgrade them to better houses. He also recommends selling once the house value has doubled.
Yeah.
So we have a couple of houses that are pretty close to being at double what we paid for them.
One of them definitely is. The other one is probably 90% there. Yeah.
So we have been having a lot of back and forth on our own personal portfolio of what does 10 years look like for us? Like what houses do we want to have? What kind of house? Like almost reassessing our buy box to say what we had was great for building, but now we want to move more into that ender stage.
Yeah.
The different stages is you have beginners, wealth builders, and enders. And enders are the people that are kind of winding down active investing and are looking to just enjoy
the fruits.
Yeah, the fruits of the labor. So we've been assessing our portfolio and seeing what do we want to hold for 10 years or, past 10 years and what's kind of our ideal retirement portfolio.
Yeah. And we just took a hard look at our list of houses and we just took a good hard look and said, all right, keep or sell. In 10 years, do we want to have this house in our portfolio?
Yeah.
So we just went through our houses and we just put a K or a S next to it. And we decided there are 5 homes that are just right off the bat that we're like, they have been great for us. They were a great learning tool. They were a great stepping stone, but it is time. Those houses are all nearing double in value.
Yep.
The cash flow on them is great.
Right.
But they are high maintenance. They bring a certain type of tenant
and
is a little higher maintenance.
They have big repairs that need to come up. So that's going to eat into cash flow.
Yeah.
So we looked at that return on equity. We looked at what's upcoming as far as big repairs. We looked at, I guess, the time involved with them and how much time we were spending managing that property, and made a decision that we are going to sell a couple of our houses in the near future.
So the idea is we're going to take some equity out of these houses we're going to sell, and we're going to put it into a new venture. Now, something we have been very interested in, but haven't really jumped off the ledge yet, is short-term rentals. And I think it's very interesting. I am very wary.
Eric's been trying to do a short-term rental for like 3 years.
Every time a house comes vacant, I'm like, let me just put furniture in it and put it on Airbnb. She's like, no, let's not do that.
Yeah.
But we're reaching a moment in our lives where we're doing a lot of internal work. We're doing a lot of work on ourselves in the sense of becoming healthier, you just emotionally and energetically. And in doing that, we're able to approach these types of conversations with our business with a more, I don't know what you'd call, just a healthier frame of mind of risk, of benefit, of growth, of letting the things happen for the sake of happening. And instead of like overanalyzing, does it feel right?
Right.
And so we took these properties, we decided we're going to sell 2, and we got a pot of money that we're going to 1031. And we just started looking at lake houses.
Yeah, I mean, part of my vision for my dream life is a lake house. And it has been something we've talked about from the beginning. So we're making a strategic business decision to sell some properties that they don't fit with our long-term vision into this Airbnb opportunity, a lake house. So we're buying something that's in a vacation town
Mm-hmm.
and we're going to deck it out, but we're also going to go stay there ourselves when it's vacant.
Mm-hmm.
And it's allowing us to use our business to create our dream life.
Right. And just a little information about the property that we've identified. And, it's just the idea of the property. It's just a beautiful 3-story lake house that has beautiful balcony views. And it will have, when we're done with it, 6 or 8 bedrooms and 4 bathrooms.
Well,
and I personally want to create a home where people can bring in, like all of their family for get-togethers, reunions, for Christmas, for Thanksgiving.
Absolutely.
Or masterminds can bring the retreats there.
Yeah. I mean, we're launching our mastermind in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And I envision probably not our first retreat, but our second retreat being there.
Yeah.
And having the space for everyone to have their own room and to be, in the same house together, networking and, go jump in the lake if you want to jump in the lake or sit on the patio. Like it's just a beautiful setting. And even if it's not this house, we are going to find a house that works.
Yeah.
And I guess all of this to say is we're both a little wary of Airbnb because of the shifts in the market and everyone flocked to it.
Yeah.
And it seems like I've seen Airbnb bust as like headline articles. So we're a little hesitant, but we know real estate. We can find a way to make it work.
Yeah.
And we're taking a calculated risk.
And we're going into it in a equity position.
Absolutely.
To where we're not going to be over leveraged on this home.
Well, we haven't talked about this, but like our worst case scenario is that we move out of our house into the lake house and rent out our home.
Mm-hmm.
So there's plenty of opportunity to make this work if Airbnb does not work for us.
Right, exactly.
But all of this to say, we are taking this calculated risk because we know our numbers, we have the reserves, and we have the entity structure. So we're able to make a move that's a little bit out of our comfort zone, but is going to make us way happier.
Yeah.
Maybe not happier, but it'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So just having this framework and this foundation sets you up so you can take the risk.
Yeah.
But it's not a massive risk in the sense of like you're terrified you're going to lose all your money.
Yeah.
It's just you have the foundation, so it's not as terrifying, I guess.
We could not have made this move any sooner than we are right now.
Right.
And for multiple reasons. For one is that the business and the equity of the homes would not have been in the position to do it. Number two, we wouldn't have been mentally ready for it.
Right.
Because, the purchase price of the lake house that we're going to get is going to be the biggest purchase we've ever made.
Yeah.
And it is going to be in a platform that we're not as familiar with.
Right.
We're not as familiar with how short-term rentals work.
Yeah.
Now,
but we know who to call, though.
Yeah, we do. And I have a really good friend that I have. I interviewed him not too long ago, Brandon Thompson. If you're interested in short-term rentals, go listen to that episode. But he is someone that he has a professional group for short-term real estate investors. And I'm going to be getting in that group.
Yeah.
And that is something I'm going to be in to educate myself on. And it's going to be a platform where I can ask the right questions and be surrounded by a community that knows the answers.
Yeah, definitely. So how to invest in real estate without going bankrupt?
Mm-hmm.
It's having reserves, knowing your properties, and knowing when the right time to sell is.
Mm-hmm.
And then having the right setup with insurance entities, your estate planning, all of that. If you have that set up, obviously it's not a guarantee you're not going to lose money or go bankrupt.
Right.
But if you have these principles and you have that foundation laid, it's going to set you up to achieve success.
Right. It's the cornerstone. When you go back to biblical, scripture, it's you got to make sure your cornerstone is there so that your house is
you're building on rock
solid,
and not
you're
sand.
building on solid rock and not sand.
Well, that's all I have.
That's
Anything
it.
else?
No, that's it. Really appreciate y'all joining in with us today here at the On Purpose Investor podcast. It's been a joy talking about how to invest in real estate without going bankrupt. Yeah. And, we'll come at you next week with something hopefully insightful that will help steer you toward building a hyper-intentional life that will bring you closer to that dream vision of where you want to spend the rest of your life. That way, when you get to the end of your life and you've taken the last step off of your ladder on top of your building, you're proud of where you're standing, you're proud of who is around you, and you're thankful that you made all the decisions you did.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we will see you next week.
See ya.
We are immensely grateful for you joining us today. If you haven't already done so, we invite you to subscribe to our show. We understand that many of you tune in regularly, but perhaps haven't had the chance to hit that subscribe button yet. Don't worry, it's effortless. It takes about 3 seconds to follow or subscribe on your platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're enjoying the show. Your support is invaluable to us and has played a crucial role in the tremendous growth of our podcast. We sincerely appreciate your assistance in any way, shape, or form. Together, we can launch this podcast to even greater heights.